Sure. My name is Mario Machado. I'm an engineer by trade. I even was a previous business owner as well. I started consulting for the business here, United Controls International, about 20 years ago. So I've been helping them all along in their IT infrastructure and other engineering aspects. And here, quite recently, right before COVID, we sold our business, and I called the owner, Rob, which we've been friends for many many years, and he said, "Come on in, and by the way, we want to kick off a big project. We want to put in an ERP." So basically, the status was United Controls International is a nuclear service provider. So basically, it's very simplistic terms. Any components, items, control boxes, anything that goes to a nuclear facility needs to be pre-tested in every aspect and every characteristic. It needs to be pre-tested. We call it dedication. So every component is dedicated to a facility, and then after it's fully approved here, then it goes to a facility and it's installed, and that is by law. So basically, nothing can go directly to a nuclear facility. It has to be pre-tested. All the testing is recorded, and then we ship from here straight to the utilities where it gets installed. And so in essence, that's what we do here at UCI. UCI short for United Controls International. Well, the onset of this project, and I have a long background in back in the MRP days and then getting into ERP. So I've been using that. I've been in manufacturing all my life, and so the position here, what had happened is they had three islands of automation, if you will, three systems. That one was financial, which was GP, and they had a customized workflow process for the middle, and it was just the workflow, and it had very limited communication with GP. So a lot of the that had to be done, the financials, some of it had to be posted to GP manually, and then there's also separate document management systems. So all three were separate. They should have been talking to each other transparently, if you will, but it was nowhere close to that. And that is what was causing a lot of the headaches here. They had been working with that setup for about 10 years, and they pretty much had it with it. It was a struggle. The two departments that were suffering the most were purchasing and shipping and receiving, because they had to receive parts in one system and transfer to another, and purchasing had to cut parts in orders in one system, post it to GP. It was duplicate work, and those two particular departments were bogged down. And that's the scenario that I came in with. And what happened next was I needed to qualify a vendor for an ERP. So, my positioning on that is, one option is no option. So I did present two options to the management here. So I presented NetSuite and also presented Business Central. I studied both. We interviewed both. And along with them, we also were qualifying the provider for each of those, for NetSuite as well as Business Central. And as the conversation went, I mean, there were two very competitive, ERP platforms. There were differences, so we obviously focused a lot on the differences. And after several months of trial and questioning and research, the interesting part is we had a general meeting, all the management, and we reviewed all the benefits and costs of each. And I posed the question to management because this whole process has been very, very open. Everybody's been involved. It has been an open door scenario, which is the best kind to implement, this type of a system. But the question I posed, okay, who do we go with? And it came down to that day. So we had NetSuite with a provider, actually out of Texas, and then we had qualified Microsoft Business Central with Kopis. Uh, and decision was made unanimously. I was the last one to put in my decision, but the unanimous decision was we're going with Microsoft and Kopis. And then I happened to ask, what steered you, and talking to management, what steered you in that direction? And the answer was, well, we've had such a good experience with Kopis up to now. We think they'll make a big difference, helping us get up to speed, or implementing the ERP. That was the answer that I got. It was, very revealing. I had obviously several conversations with Kopis as well as in NetSuite provider, and I was very pleased that the decision was to go with that combination. Well, the most important factor was we had a pre-standing relationship with Kopis. Kopis the one that put in our GP
Hmm.
system in, and we had worked with Kopis. We had worked with a lot of the management there. We knew them, and we've always had has always been a pleasant experience, a very compatible with how we work, and they were always very supportive. So that played a big role in the decision. And never mind, as we got started, then it really played out as we started development side of the Business Central. Yeah, obviously there were several concerns raised by everyone, and it was my job to calm down or appease everyone that everything was gonna be all right. Now I did say that knowing that I've actually been involved with a prior life with a company implementing SAP and bringing the company down to literally to its knees. So I am fully aware of the negative side of all this, but I assured them that it was the right move. But not only that, the way I painted it for them was we have a company, UCI, there is a explicit need. It was very obvious there's a need because we don't have a one system solution. We had three islands. We had the need, we had the product, Microsoft Business Central, but the key was the person in the middle. That one is Kopis. And I said that's the key because they're the ones that get the Business Central to our facility. And I assure them we're not going to go wrong, and they're going to be supportive. They're going to be. Uh, we like to. The management style here is very progressive in the sense that once we start something, we schedule it repeatedly, and we basically jump in until it gets done. Is very proactive. Not a lot of sitting back. We just like to keep things moving at a very good pace. Not to the point where it's problematic, but just at a very quick moving pace where we can see results and we have targets. And I assured them that Copus was going to help us do that. Well, surely, basically, beginning to end, uh, when parts are received or goods are received, that was done on GP. However, believe it or not, our middle workflow, where the testing was happening and the actual quote manufacturing or production, if you will, was happening, that had no visibility to inventory because that resided in GP. So we had to coordinate and point. People had to jump from that platform to GP to find out where the inventory was, to go get it, bring it in, do the testing. After the testing is completed, that needed to move back to GP for shipping and for invoicing. So purchasing the same thing when parts needed to be purchased. The workflow determined what parts needed to be purchased, but the purchaser had to move to GP to cut the POs and then transfer back to the workflow to let them know, look, there's the PO in progress. And that was a constant battle. We're always moving from one platform to the other. Uh, Not a good situation. Not a good situation. It was burdensome at best, if not. You can imagine some. There's opportunities for confusion while you're working in that environment. We went from that scenario to a one platform scenario. So it's night and day. So basically, parts are received in Business Central. The technicians are know where the parts are. They're able to go find the location, pick up the components, do the testing. They put them back into inventory themselves, and that gets transferred to shipping. Shipping has the PO in front of them, which is cut within Business Central. They're able to receive parts and ship from Business Central, and that both the receiving and shipping obviously communicate back to invoicing or accounts receivable, accounts payable. They have something that especially financials here, accounting has changed dramatically because they have fingertip information right at their fingertips, which they've never had before. Not just uh, accounts receivable and payable, but also margins. We actually have product item margins that we can now tabulate, including labor time, that never existed before. So now they can see what margins are they making on each single part. That was only done by hand before. It was done, but very broad scale, very limited. Now they have a dashboard that tells them, for management, it tells them everything they want to know right at the dashboard. Before, those were handmade reports that had to be fed and created to our management. So it's a world of change here, and a little bit of getting used to, obviously, because it's just a big, significant change. But change is always much better tolerated when it's a good change versus a bad change. Well, the uh, number one, qualify the need, obviously, but if you do have an established need for an ERP, or you definitely is a move to your that is fully supported by management, I think it's important to get that support, that backing by all of management. But after that, it is important to qualify the ERP itself, and also along with the provider. I don't think you can differentiate those two because, like I said earlier, you can easily have a good product like Microsoft Business Central. You have a need on your end. The person in the middle, if they do a poor job, you're not going to get your perception or your what you receive in and your end as far as the system implementation could be poor, and then you have a negative impression overall of that platform, and you may have to cut it off, disregard it. But it's not the product itself that was bad; it's the implementation and the process to get it to you. So the product can be exceptional, but if it's not implemented correctly, if it's not brought into your facility correctly, you will have problems. A good analogy here is, and as we were developing or doing the business process um, uh, re-engineering, and I noted that there was an opportunity. This was kind of interesting for our two most troubling departments, purchasing and ship and receiving. There was a bona fide opportunity to make those the more that literally the most streamlined processes coming out of the ERP. And a year later, that is in fact what happened. Purchasing is 2 clicks, the PO is out, shipping, receiving, they pull up a PO, it's literally in front of them. They make a couple of quantity entries and it's done. So what what transpired was, and it was kind of there's a little bit of irony here, but our two busiest departments turn out to be have too much time on their hands now. They were working through all they had to do and still had a lot of spare time. And then the bolus, if you will, the majority of the work shifted to sales because they were actually doing a little more work setting up the orders up front and making sure everything was documented as you set up the order, and the quote and the order process uh, became more involved, and they were like, well, this is different, but very interesting scenario because the setup of the order is where most of the work probably should be, and down the line it was significantly streamlined. So all our processes here changed. Yeah, even then, even sales though has streamlined many other processes. They have immediate visibility to all the customer information, to the production flow that we have, production scheduling. So they have more tools in their at their hands. But it was interesting to note how the workload shifted in our company, directly resulting from Business Central. And again, I was very cautious about, when I started dealing with Kopis, when we got to the point of starting the implementation phase, uh, there were some nuances, I guess, to our industry. Being in the nuclear industry, uh, most of our processes and business processes are very explicit, very precise, probably much more so than any normal manufacturer, because we're regulated by the NRC. We have a lot of all the work that we do has to be saved and cataloged, and so it's just the way we operate. It has a higher level of scrutiny, if you will, and that also translated to how the system was going to be implemented. It had to include a lot of detail, a lot of customization. I mean, and I was aware of that, and I conveyed that early on to David, our key point person in the implementation process. And lo and behold, he caught on very, very early on, and he never complained about the amount of detail, the amount of customization we did. He understood. We explained our process in detail. He picked up on it and was able to translate it to pages. So different pages that we have now. So we achieved what we needed. We have a very customized process riding on Business Central, but it does everything we had before. But not only that, the key there was we learned from our prior systems, and we selected improvements from the prior systems that we have. Even though there were 3 different ones, we actually selected improvements from there and went to Kopis and said, can we also put these in at the same time? And we did. So it was a triple win. I believe that, Business Central was a win. I believe we won, and definitely Kopis won. So we're all that much better for it. We're a very happy customer, and we're still now doing, minor, we call them tweaks, improvements, or, a few wish lists. We're still doing some of those, but the system is in and is doing extremely well.